Hi, this is Scott Herbst. I am founder and president of Six Flex Training and Consulting, and you are listening to The Flex, a podcast where we have conversations with people who are expressing leadership with the intent that it open access to you expressing yours. I am really excited to have Michael Laverdiere here with me today. Michael is the BCBA director at the Minnesota Autism Center, and they're a multidisciplinary autism provider and one of the largest in Minnesota. Michael is also the president of the Minnesota Association for Behavior Analysis. So he's got us expressing leadership in a couple different places he will share. As always, I'm going to keep the introduction to a minimum so you can really hear Michael's story from Michael. Michael, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. My pleasure. I would love to, you and I talked a little bit about what got you to where you are offline, and I'd love for you just to share a little bit about your story. You can start with, what got you into behavior analysis, but then I'm really particularly interested in how you found your role and how you've grown that, but also grown within that. So take it away, man.
Sure. Yeah, so about me, I guess. I'm a former veteran of the Navy. Spent some time in Pearl Harbor and being deployed, and during that time had opportunity to find myself in some leadership roles there. After finishing, my military time, I got out and found out that the real world was tough. Bouncing around and really coming from an area within the military that didn't translate the greatest into civilian, the civilian job market. So after a few years of that, I decided, you know what, I kind of want to go back to school. And ultimately, I started out wanting to work for the VA and help veterans. And along my journey through my education, I stumbled into working with kids on the spectrum and was just like, wow, this is a game changer. I thought about it, and ultimately for me, I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And that's kind of what drew me into the field of psychology in general. And I thought about it and I'm like, okay, I'm working with veterans, I can make a marginal difference in a veteran's life working as a counselor or something like that. But when I found ABA and working within the autism population, I was like, wow, what a powerful impact I could have on someone's life and change that trajectory completely, giving them the tools of language and things like that to access the things that they need in their lives and communicate and live fuller independent lives. That was powerful to me.
Yeah.
So that's really what got me into it. So
Awesome. And
yeah.
so you got into behavior analysis, and how did you find your current role?
Sure. So I worked in, several different roles and in several different states. Started out in Michigan, graduated from Northern Michigan University in Marquette. And
Where are you from?
so I'm from all over. I was in the military. My dad was in the military, so I kind
Okay.
of from all over. But my wife is from the Upper Peninsula there. And so we found ourselves there. And I said, this is where
Yeah.
I'm going to go to school. But yeah, so so I worked in some different roles there, but in home and at a community mental health agency there, and then excuse me, and then we found our way out to Minnesota. I accepted a role out here as a BCBA with a organization here in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and it was right on the heels of COVID. And so, it was crazy. I mean, I came out and did a whole visit and toured the center, met the people, and then accepted the position, went on house hunting, accepted a job, went back to Michigan, and on the way back, the country shut down. And then, also found out that the offer that I put in on the house was accepted. So I was like, now I'm committed and
Uh-huh.
unsure of whether or not I'm really going to have a job or not.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Things wound up working out though. We made our way out here. The clinic looked much different than what it did when I came and toured it. We were down to, I think, two staff, two kids at that point,
Mm.
and really just kind of had to spend the next year or so rebuilding it.
Yeah.
And faced a lot of challenges there, a lot of rapid growth, a lot of, hey, we gotta get some movement here on a lot of different fronts. And we were able to tackle it. And I think that was, an important challenge.
Was this at the Minnesota Autism Center?
No, this was
Okay.
prior to.
Yeah.
um, but again, I think it really taught me some lessons, kind of going through that and navigating it and figuring out, all right, what do we have to do next? What do we got to do? And so after, I was with them for about a year, and then due to just some circumstances with my mother and some family, some health stuff, like she came to live with us and was getting treated for a condition at the Mayo Clinic. And I kind of needed to expand on my availability at home. And so the opportunity came up to come and work in a hybrid role at Minnesota Autism Center. Which really afforded me a little bit more flexibility, for my mom and bringing her to appointments. Um, and so I accepted that role, and wow, that's kind of where my journey begins in terms of where I'm at now, and what that's looked like over the last few years. Um, there's a lot to uncover there.
Yeah, so share a little bit about, what was going on when you came on, and I know you've done some work to really build things.
Yeah, yeah.
Share some
And so
about
that's
that.
kind of that's kind of where I was going in terms of the lessons that I learned at the organization previous, and growing things and tackling challenges on the heels of COVID, bringing that same mentality, and I like to say kind of where I'm at is just a matter of timing sometimes too. And I came to Minnesota Autism Center at a time when the organization was transitioning from like a previous funding stream for autism services that was really more mental health focused, and switching to the current funding stream, which was founded more in ABA.
Yeah.
Um, and so uh, I came to the organization, and there were two other BCBAs at the company at the time. Both immediately went on maternity leave, and I was there alone for a little bit, looking
You were
around.
the behavior analysis department.
What did I do? What did I get into?
Yeah.
It was a pretty large organization. We had, I think, over 400, employees, and 350 plus clients. And so taking a look at that, and really, again, at the same time, shifting to a model that's more founded in ABA. I kind of had to take inventory. Okay, what do we need to do here? And the list was long. The list was real long. And that was kind of a turning point for me. And you know, did I get in over my head, or can we tackle this, and can I use what I've learned to help the organization, and to help the kids and help the staff get to where they need to be.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, I think that's something that I don't know if anyone can relate to it. I can relate to it. Um, that experience of taking on a role and then thinking, oh my God, am I over my head? And I can think about that. When I graduated, I was a professor, and that was a unique experience where it was like, wait a second. I used to be the person that I was asking the questions, and now I've got all these students coming to me for answers. Am I
Yeah,
in over my head? And then stepping into you're president of a state association. I've done that, and now I'm on the board of SEABA. And even there, it's funny because I was president of Illinois, and then I moved to South Carolina, and now I'm just the conference coordinator. But I
Sure.
step into that role and I'm like, oh my God, I actually haven't been the one accountable for the conference before. So
Yeah,
like
a
I
lot.
had someone doing that. Am I
That's a
in over
lot.
my head? So I think that's something people can relate to, and probably just, someone who's right out of grad school taking on their first case and managing their first team. That question. So
Yeah, I think.
I'm just curious if you could talk more about how you navigated that experience of, am I in over my head, and then talk about, how you did and what you've built, and I'll shut
Yeah.
up. I just talked a lot.
No, no, I think, and credit to all of the conference coordinators out there. That's a big job. No, I'll tell you, imposter syndrome is real, right? I think you find yourself in those situations, and whether or not you're in over your head, or you find yourself in a role that's unfamiliar, and you just look around like, wow, you know, am I the person for this?
Yeah.
Do I have the skills to do what needs to be done? And I think, you know, for me, being grounded a little bit just in terms of humility, and knowing that I don't no, I don't have all of the answers, and I definitely don't expect the people around me to have all of the answers either. A lot of it is figuring, knowing how to find them, or working through the issues, and really just coming up with a way to systematically and methodically go about things, is really, for me, what kind of helps me through that. It's easy to get overwhelmed in the face of something like that, and for me, it was about, like, let's set a priority list. What are the top three things that we need to really focus in on, and let's target those, and maybe put some of the other things on the back burner for now, um, so that I don't get overwhelmed and the people around me don't get overwhelmed. Um, I think that that's a big part in how, in what I learned. Again, you kind of on the heels of COVID, and figuring those things out, and then coming into the organization that Mac was, a similar situation, and really just kind of putting one foot in front of the other, and going forward on a consistent basis, is how you get there. Um, that's kind of a little bit of the lessons that I've learned along the way. Is, you don't climb a mountain in one big giant leap. It's one foot after the other is how you get to the top. So
Yeah. I think, could you talk a little bit about what that really looks like? Because I get
yeah,
what you're saying, and it's still like a little conceptual. So the thing I could hear that I think anyone could apply is set your priorities.
right.
So if you're new on a case, like, I don't know, if you just take on a client that, let's say you inherit a client and their treatment plan's not in great order, meaning they've got a lot of goals that they're not in the program. That's happened to me. Um, I think that, like, okay, prioritize, like, get the first three in.
Yep.
Give
Yeah. I mean,
more information. So, like, what did you prioritize? But then, what did, like, putting one foot in front of the other look like for you?
sure. I think that, and to be honest, I just met with one of my team members earlier this week, and was trying to put some of this into words for them as well.
Yeah.
Somebody who was feeling overwhelmed, and trying to help them reframe a little bit. And for me, what it really looked like, and that shift for me came down to, um, really being, and especially coming out of school and things like that, where we're a lot of times we're really goal oriented and goal focused, and looking at, like, oh, I've got to make X, GPA to get accepted to grad school, and things like that, and all of those things, and it's hard. It's hard when we have these goals and we set them, and especially if there's a lot of them. I think sometimes we get ourselves into a corner where it becomes almost impossible or unattainable to
Yeah.
reach those things.
Yeah.
And we set ourselves up for failure a little bit. And
Yeah.
for me on a day-to-day basis, what that was a shift in looking at values, really, and
Uh-huh.
trying to be more values driven. And for me, that's like, how can I um, improve the things around me or leave them better than how I found them, right?
Yeah.
So, um, on a kind of on a day-to-day basis, that's what I try to focus on, is
Yeah.
starting my day one way and ending it better,
Yeah.
however that journey goes or whatever the day takes me. And so from one meeting to the next, I mean, I'm always bouncing from one thing to the next, just, whether you're at a director level or whether or not you're a BCBA fresh out of school and you've got a caseload and you're shifting from one client to the next throughout your day. I just take that, that values driven mentality into each meeting as I bounce from one thing to the next, and really just whatever it is I'm working on, try to leave it better than when I found it. And so at the end of the day, that kind of gives me a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction with what I accomplished versus getting lost and trying to achieve all of these attainable goals. So like that's the one foot in front of the other part, you know.
Yeah. Got it. Great. I think that's a great way to measure, am I putting one foot in front of the other? Um, I know one thing that I deal with personally, one of my challenges is there's just always a question, like a nagging question, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Right? Am I focused on the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And what I like about you said is that gives a way to look out here and get out of the like noise inside my head and
Yeah.
say like, okay, well, like let's look at what I'm working on. I set the priority. So at some other point I said, yeah, this is the thing to work on. And now I can actually look at this and say, well, is it going in am I making it better? Is it going in the direction I want to? Or am the steps I take pushing it, moving it in that direction? So,
Yeah, and I think, I think it's important to know that not everything is going to be a home run. Uh,
mhm.
and
Yeah.
giving ourselves and others the grace to fail and get back up, learn from it, and get better. You know, I think that's such a huge lesson that I want, the folks on my team to take, and and help them develop some resiliency too, and just being able to recover quickly from challenges, and how they view things. The framework of it is so important in how you look at things to minimize that burnout and um, not become overwhelmed and get overtaken by it.
Yeah. If you notice me smiling as you were talking about setting goals and failing in a lot of them, and that was recognition. I was just thinking about I've got a goals group I'm part of, other business owners, and we meet once a week, and every quarter we set our quarter's goals, and probably like 70, probably like a quarter to a third of them, about halfway through, it's like, man, there's no way.
Right.
So,
Not
uh,
this is not going to happen.
yeah, but it sounds like what you have learned to focus on is um keeping some attention on like the process is important as well, and how
Yeah.
you engage with what's going on in front of you versus like just, am I gonna hit all my numbers or not?
Yeah. I mean, of course, we do our planning, we do our forecasting, we do our vision casting and goal setting and things
Yeah.
like that. And then we try to plan on the front end for like, okay, what do we need to What things do we need to try to put in place to get there, and then it comes down to really just the work and again putting the one foot in front of the other, um, consistently and repetitively, and then like that's what that's what's going to get you there.
Awesome. And you came in, you were I know there were a couple other BCBAs, but you were the one who was really there and moving to this new model
Yeah,
from more of a healthcare to ABA model. And so where are you at now? And talk about some of the ways you've grown and challenges you faced in going from point A to point B.
sure. Yeah, again, coming into the organization, things were evolving, and they continue to evolve. Really, I wasn't initially the director there or anything like that. Um, I think the way that that really came about has a little bit to do, again, with some of the progression and the again that putting the one foot in front of the other approach that I was taking, but also I think markedly like what sort of like a pivotal point for me too, and um, I had an opportunity to do a workshop, and I know that hot button topics within the field, the compassionate trauma-informed care. You've got the Dr. Hanley's research and methods that he's developed. So I did a workshop, the Hanley workshop for the practical functional assessment and skills-based training. And I did so like on the heels of being involved in a restrictive procedure at one of our centers to, we had a client that we had to implement some safety care procedures just to preserve safety and make sure that they didn't injure themselves or anyone else. And, you know, it, it I'm like looking back at it, it was just like, oh, this is just not the ABA that I really want to be doing, and it really struck a chord and
Yeah.
hearing some of the information he was putting out, just about televisability and transparency and what we're doing. And I really looked back on that and I felt like I wouldn't want that to be televised. That was just rough. It was rough.
Yeah.
And so in kind of learning that new information and digesting it and trying to look at how could we apply this to what we're doing, and shift our approach, and and look at things a little bit more compassionately and incorporate, the idea of trauma-informed care into what we were doing. And so, I took that back to the organization and I really just was like, hey, I think this is what we need to be incorporating into what we're doing and invest the time and energy into training our folks to do these things and put and it really took off. And the I'm really fortunate to have had leadership at the time that invested in me and invested in this idea and really gave us the the latitude to just go and do it. And so, again, just kind of, all right, well, what are our priorities? Training, that's what we need to do. And really just started tackling it. Started small at a couple of centers and worked on it there, got some folks that were, able to start implementing it and then help train others and really started to scale it. And within under a year, we were able to expand that out to all of our centers, and it was crazy. Throughout our organization, we had, um, on a month-to-month basis across 20 plus centers, we were seeing, upwards of, a couple of hundred restrictive procedures being implemented a month across all of these organizations. Now, a restrictive procedure can be anywhere from like a guided, if we had to put our hands on and implement any
Yeah.
level of safety care. So 200 plus in a month, across all of these centers. I think the 2023 was like our first year we had like 5 or 6 months of zero, you know. across you. So it was really impactful, and we were able to see just such a huge difference that it made. Um, but I really, again, I credit the leadership at the organization and kind of seeing it, and really kind of just similar to me, some of those things that I learned were counter to what I understood ABA to be at the time. And it was really just kind of keeping an open mind to it, and looking at the science, and breaking it down, and realizing that, hey, this is something that we can do, and achieving buy-in with the leadership, and then the folks that again, we were going through so much time. A lot of our therapists were coming from, like, oh, they've been working in this mental health based um you know model, and then we went to this ABA based model, where we started off by really teaching like some very fundamental ABA principles and things, and then now we're rocking their boat again, throwing more conceptual stuff at them that was further even beyond what they were able to where we started, I should say. And so really a credit to everybody for just kind of keeping an open mind, and I think that's what really made it successful.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about creating that buy-in, and if you have any insights there. I think that's something anyone could relate to as well. And I mean, one thing I hear that you did that is powerful is that you made the request,
Yeah.
that you saw a difference could be made, and then spoke to it and made a request. I'm curious if beyond just simply asking, you have any insight about, here's how I got buy-in for this thing that I saw possible.
Yeah. Really, that's that was eloquently put. It started by just making a request. And, you know, um, I've always, what's the saying? And the answer is always no if you don't ask, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it really did just kind of start there. And talking about it in larger leadership meetings, and trying to work through it in a way that was digestible, especially, with us being more of a multidisciplinary team. Um, not everyone on the team knew the technical terminology and aspects, and so presenting it in a way that was digestible to everybody, um, and really speaking to what my perceived value in it was. And I mean, when you start talking about, I really predicted that we were going to see a drastic impact on the amount of restrictive procedures. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the other thing too is one thing I've learned in ABA, it's almost anywhere you work, it's a business. It is a business, and um, really trying to hone in on the business side of things, and demonstrating, the positives, and getting buy-in from executive leadership on spending the money to send people through training. I think is another tactic, another approach, to achieving buy-in at that level is, when you're speaking to the people that deal with the numbers, you got to speak to them in numbers, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so breaking it down in that way, and doing a deep dive on, like, hey, this is how it can improve the quality of what we're doing, the compassion in what we're doing. This is how it can improve the business side of things, and the numbers, and the impact that I think it could have. Um, and then asking, really asking to start small and do a pilot and see how it works. Um, yeah, that's kind of how I started that out, and did my proposal and got buy-in.
Awesome. The thing I'm going to underline for the listeners is that there's really speaking to the concerns of the people you're addressing. And, I could hear one concern you had personally was that you want to make a difference, and you want to make a difference in a way that leaves people feeling good about what they're doing,
Yeah,
not just the clients, but the people doing the work. But then there's, the leadership who probably holds that concern as well, and also has a concern for, is this going to be affordable? Can we, uh, you know, does this make business sense? Right.
yeah,
and then speaking to that, and that applies anywhere, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, if you're proposing something new for a parent to try, you got to speak to the concerns of the parent.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely about, like you said, listening to all of the people involved and and getting buy-in, especially when you're looking at that it's one thing to focus on the quality for those implementing it for the clients, and then again looking upwards at leadership and getting their buy-in. It's a whole other approach that you've got to take. Um, so being like, yeah, being mindful of the audience and being mindful of how you need to adapt your approach.
Awesome. We're getting close to the end of our time scheduled, and I am curious what's going on now and what's next for you and your role. And we didn't talk
Yeah.
at all about the Minnesota Association.
Yeah. So, it's change is inherent to what we do, and I think,
Uh,
like, especially here in Minnesota, it seems like the ground is always moving underneath our feet. Last year, we were able to get licensure passed through legislation, and
hmm,
so BCBAs are now licensed in Minnesota, and what that looks like for the state, and the policy for the funding model for autism services here, it again is shifting, and it, it's um, it's changing the way that a lot of our team structures are in Minnesota. Um, Without going into a huge deep dive here, because don't put a quarter in me, I'll get started. But yeah, it really is. And so that those are some of the more significant challenges that we're looking at right now, is how to navigate those. We've got a lot of, the model here was very different from other states. We've other states utilize kind of what we call like that two-tiered model of like BCBA, RBT, right?
yeah.
The way that the model was set up here, with the autism funding stream, it really incorporated a middle tier there. So like a three-tiered model of like
Mhm.
BCBA, kind of like that middle tier of like almost a BCABA slash, like case client coordinator, and then you've got your BTs and RBTs, right?
Hmm.
And so, it's again, the with the changes and various budget cuts and policy and all of that stuff, what do they say, funding dictates service delivery a lot of times, and that's kind of what we're navigating now, is all of that is really changing under our feet in real time. And so trying to navigate that and prepare the people on the team, and down the way to figure out how that looks and what it's going to look like for us in the future.
Any insights about keeping people, you mentioned earlier, a really values-based approach, and any insights about staying connected to values and what matters in the face of a changing, uncertain environment?
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, it's really just staying firm in um, what you hope to accomplish, right? And not getting caught in those lofty, uh, insurmountable, sometimes seemingly insurmountable goals sometimes, that really can just become a giant, weight on your shoulders. Um, and again, just kind of giving yourself, some room and some grace to fail, and again, putting one foot in front of the other, just on a day-to-day basis. I think that just through consistent repetition of putting one foot in front of the other is how you get there, right? There's no shortcuts. It really is just the grind of putting one foot in front of the other day after day. So, and again, like, that's to me, like, that's where at the end of the day I can find my job satisfaction, is like, did I leave things better today than when it started,
Yeah, awesome. Couple more questions. what are you proud of?
Wow, what am I proud of? Honestly, I'm really proud. Are we talking professionally here? Or
Yeah, go for whatever you want to share about, man.
um, I'm proud of a lot of things around me. I'm proud of the team that I have and the grit that they've shown in the past few years. If you had asked me in 2021 where we would be in 2025, I would not have said that we would be where we're at. Um, to have come this far in a short period of time, I think it really is just a testament to a lot of different people around me, and I give them credit. Um, I'm proud of my family, for going on this journey with me too, and starting a second career and hanging with me through that and supporting me. So yeah, I mean, those are the things that I'm most proud of.
Awesome. Thank you. And then my last question is, if people would like to reach you, how can they do that?
Sure. You can definitely reach me through it's the Minnesota Northlands Association for Behavior Analysis. It's Manaba is what we call it. So the manaba.org is our website. Can reach me through the president address. Also my name, Michael Laverdiere at mnautism.org. Another good contact. And yeah, anybody wants to reach out, please do.
Awesome. Michael, thank you for taking the time to talk with me and share your journey and your insights with our listeners. Thank you for what you provide to the community of Minnesota in your business and professionally. And we are going to wrap this up here. I just want to say thank you to those of you who are listening, and we will see you back here next time.
All right. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.